Hey everyone, it's Suey. I'm coming to you today to do another book tag. This one is called the Nonfiction November book tag, which means I should do it in November before November's over, right? I'm thinking. This one was originally done by Bookish Travels and I was tagged by Robert G., reader of books. I was really surprised to be tagged by him because he is one of those booktube channels that like shot to booktube stardom like instantly, and I thought I completely flew under the radar and he was not even aware of my existence, even though I did tag him when he was very first starting. So I was just really surprised that I was even on his radar. So thank you for the tag. This is a tag about nonfiction. A few prompts here, and I am really sad because I went down to grab a book from the craziness of the downstairs books and I couldn't find it. The first one is, what motivated you to pick up your first nonfiction book and can you remember it? Well, I don't really remember what my first nonfiction book would have been, but the one that came to mind is the one I went to look for. I know it's down there. And it is Stories About Abraham Lincoln. I think it's called something like that. It's a teeny little thin thing that I got from the Scholastic Book Fairs. I probably was maybe, should we say, third grade-ish or something. And I absolutely loved it. And I read it over and over and over again. Thought I knew everything there was to know about Abraham Lincoln because of that teeny tiny little book. Wish I could have found it to show. Maybe I can look it up. I don't know if I can. It'll be a miracle if I find it online even. So what motivated me to read it, and hopefully I'm thinking this counts, right? The very first nonfiction I remember. I'm sure there was tons of others I read as a kid, but that one really sticks in my mind as being kind of huge. I don't know why. It's Scholastic Book Fairs, people. They motivated me to do a lot of things. Not the book fairs necessarily, but the book orders. Do you know what I'm talking about? Where you would get the little paper and you would pour through it and then choose a few and fill out the little form and turn it in. And then a couple of weeks later, you would get your stack of books back with your little form stuck in it. And it was like the most amazing day ever. So that's what I'm talking about. They weren't necessarily the book fairs. They were those book orders. I know, I'm really, really old. If you can remember it, I'm sorry, you're old too. Actually, my kids did it. So they're not that old. So I don't know when that stopped. Maybe they're still doing it. You guys should, with kids, should tell me if they're still doing that thing. You probably go online and make your orders or something now. But it was the coolest thing to look through the actual paper and mark the actual things on that little slip, because all the books were listed on that slip and you would mark the ones you wanted and figure out how much you needed to pay. And you would stick your money in a little envelope and turn it in. And then magically you would get those books a little bit later. It was kind of like, you know, Amazon. Only not. How do you choose your next nonfiction read? Mostly, I would probably say I choose it by what everyone else is buzzing about. Seems like nonfiction, there seems to be a few that rise to the top and everyone ends up reading it. And then you're just like, oh, I got to read that too. Also, I would say I choose the like memoirs and things. I will go on to Libby and just see what's available. When I'm ready to go on a trip and I want a memoir to listen to, we'll just see what's available or put something on hold a week before and hope that it pops into my Libby while I'm needing to listen to it while I drive or something. So I just choose from that list. Mostly what just people talk about. I don't usually go out and search for like, oh, I want to learn this subject. That was supposed to be my first phase thing that I started doing the first year I was doing this, but I kind of stopped this past year, was to think of a subject and then go out and research it. Yeah. So I don't really do that very well. I just see what everyone else is loving and then I'm like, oh, I want to learn about that too. Do you take notes or annotate your nonfiction books? I don't. Sometimes I want to, but then I just can't do it. It just feels weird. I usually want to do it like in books about writing where I want to like circle and underline the things that pop out to me that I want to remember, but I just don't. Have you read a nonfiction book that has challenged your beliefs and assumptions? Perhaps, but nothing really earth-shattering or else I would remember it, right? I'm sure there's something that made me think, oh, really? I'm sure there's something like that. but nothing really earth-shattering in my life, I guess, has jumped out at me and made me like completely change everything that I believe. So, oh, that's a boring answer to that one, isn't it? How do you feel about the intersection of storytelling and factual content in nonfiction? Okay, this one I can say that I absolutely love it. It's true that sometimes in nonfiction books you want to go and research it a little more because you don't know what you've read, if what you've read is actually true or not, because they have made it feel like a story. So then that just makes you research some more and learn, and that's great. You know, look up stuff. That's great. I think that's awesome if something compels you to look further. If you're not sure of what you read, is like, is that really how it happened? Or, you know, is that really the truth? So I think that's great. And I love reading nonfiction that feels like fiction. In other words, it has a narrative and reads like fiction. I love the other kind too, for the most part. But yeah, if it reads like a story, then I especially love it. Is there a topic you wish authors would explore? Gosh, these questions are like mind-bogglingly hard to answer. I'm sure there's a topic I wish they would explore, but I don't know what it is. I don't know. Yes, I do, but I don't know what it is. Do you incorporate insights from nonfiction into your daily life? I hope so. Like this past year, I read a book called Overlap about things that you can do in your life to be more happy, like what a happy person does. And hopefully I learned something from that book and incorporated it into my life a little bit. Sometimes I snarkily think in my head, you should be doing such and such a thing if you want to be happy, according to the book you read. Yeah, and you know, like if you read self-help books, hopefully you are going to try and do something you learned. I read the Miracle Morning this past year, and I tried, but I failed. Also, the intermittent fasting book, which I read a couple years ago, which I tried and I pretty much failed. So those kinds of things, I try to incorporate them into my life, of course. Yeah. Choose just one book from your nonfiction collection to highlight. So when I was downstairs looking for the Abraham Lincoln book, I went and looked at the nonfiction section, which, by the way, I have never highlighted book by book on this channel. Do you remember when I was going through my sections and highlighting book by book? I never did the nonfiction. I didn't know if anybody really cared. But there's so many good nonfiction books in that collection down there. I do not know how to choose a favorite. If I were to look back over the past years reading, I read a lot of nonfiction this past year, more than I think I've probably ever read in my life before during a year time. And there's some really great ones, but I think the one that I loved the most was the memoir by Simu Liu. And I know it seems pretty shallow to pick some random celebrity's memoir as my highlighted book, nonfiction book for you, because I didn't really learn a whole lot. It didn't change my life. It was just so heartwarming, and I just made him so endearing to me. It hit all the feels, and I just absolutely loved it. So if you just someday want something like that, then, and you haven't read that one or listened to that one yet, then add that to your list. I promise you, you will love it. Then I'm supposed to tag people, of course. I don't know who hasn't done this one yet. I think I've seen it around a bit. So I'm just going to say, if you haven't done this one yet, then do it. And you have to hurry fast because it's Nonfiction November Tag, you know what I'm saying? Save it for next year or just bump it into December. It'll be okay. All right. That's my little tag. Thanks, Robert, for tagging me. And I am so happy to be on your radar. Oh, gosh. Okay. Anyway, everyone, have a great day. And until next time, happy reading.